Okay, here we are in farming 0040, beginning the process of dialing in the look for the entanglement. And so I'll select the controller, and that brings up the channel in the channel box. You can see that brings up the attributes that will need to be adjusted uh, on a. This works in conjunction with the render setup layer. So on a per layer basis, some of these things will need to be adjusted. But you don't use the channel uh, you don't use the attributes on the controller to make the adjustments. Those are done on a per layer basis. So let me show you how that works. So we start out with the ribbon layer. Now when you're dialing in this look, what you'll need to do is step through each one of these layers and make sure each of them are appropriate. Each of them are appropriate for the shot that you're working with. So we'll start with the ribbon. We'll see that we get the ribbon in the scene. Let's see, I'll try to leave this here, maybe make it smaller. And in order to get viewport feedback on that, you need to enable textures, disable the default material override. And one thing that can help is to go into the color settings and just turn the background down to black so it's easier to see. And what I've done on the new controller, so this is version 5, so you want to make sure that when you're working with an entanglement in a scene, use the latest version, because I've streamlined the controls on this and changed the way they work, and also added color settings to make it easy to know which things will need adjustment. So if we go in here, and you'll notice that first of all, the top layer in this layer, some of these do not have colors, and any of them that don't have colors, that have no color, then it's something that it's very unlikely that you'll need to mess with at all. So in this layer, notice we got 2 things that are green. Those are the things that you need to go in and have some possibly make some changes. And in this layer, we've got 1 thing that is green, and then inside that controller or collection, we've got 3 things that are green. And each of these things, it's a possibility that some adjustment will need to be made. And the names are all self-explanatory. Radius, and you notice over here on the right, as soon as I selected this layer, so we'll go back into the full layer or the scene, and notice there's nothing over here in the channel box, no indication. So we'll go back into ribbon, and we've got these yellow boxes. These are going to be the things that are adjusted with these relative overrides in render setup. Now you can adjust them here, in the channel box, or you can adjust them with, you can scrub them with the channel box in the viewport, or you can adjust them in the render setup. Roll rate, that doesn't have a color. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I just want to point out that the roll rate doesn't have a color because but it's there if it's unlikely that it'll need to be changed, but if it makes sense to change it, then that's where you do that. Texture density, it just changes the distribution of the density, how tightly it's packed together. Okay, so that's all that will need to be done on the ribbon layer, and you'll see right away that a lot of these are redundant, so this won't take long at all. So we'll go in now to the sparkles, and then on sparkles, this is a sprites layer. So what you want to do is do a run up on this, and you need to get it up around this shot is 84, so we've got a 100 frame run up, so it starts at 84 with a 100 frame run up, so we're at 110 now, so we're kind of in the beginning or in the middle of we're well into the shot. And so if you go into sparkles now, you notice 2 layers or 2 collections are green. In that we've got scale, which will change the size of the sparkles, and these are sprites, so that would change the XY dimensions of the sparkles locked together. So, and then in this, we've got another green layer here, and in that green layer there are 3 green things and 2 blue things. I'll take the blue things here in just a minute, but in the green things it's radius, and radius works the way you expect it to. It just changes. Now you'll need to do run up again on that for the radius to take effect. And density changes the how tightly the sprites are packed along the length of the curve, and the emission rate changes how quickly how fast they are emitted. Both will increase how many sparkles you get along the curve. Now on these blue, notice too you've got magnitude, min life, max life. It's obvious what those do, but it's unlikely that any shot it's going to call. Those are dialed into the basic look. Speaking of look, I want to point out that the entanglement itself does calculations to maintain the look across distances from about a meter to about a quarter of a mile. So these layers that are being adjusted in these render setups on the channel box here are on top of the adjustment that the entanglement is making. Just wanted to make that clear. Now notice that we've got 2 blue layers here, and these layers, these adjustments will only need to be made in fast-moving shots. If the shot, and I don't mean fast-moving with one character relative to another, I mean when the 2 characters are traversing a large area through the scene. So if they're running down a hill or something like that, or if the one's a long way away and running up a mountain or something, then you would want to increase the advanced distance. And what that does is it moves the emitter out, so the particles, or so the sprites that take a long time to begin to live are sorry, I had a cat situation there. So the particles that take a long time to come into existence will be emitted in advance of the curve. And then because of that, it decreases the density. So you may need to increase the density of the curves that follow, just to make it look better. And what you want to do on that is, in the fast moving shots, just take a look at it and see what looks better. If it looks better to how far to move it out and how dense to make it, so it's pretty. Okay, now we're going to start to see that a lot of these are redundant. So in the sparkles we had 2 layers, the scale and the density and the emitter rate and radius. We're going to see that that's going to be the same. The scale for rings. So let's step into rings here. We don't have anything on because those, so we'll need to do a run up on each of these. So we'll do a quick run up on this. It doesn't take long, fortunately. And then we start to see the rings. And then on this again, the scale is the same. And some of these values will not be available in the channel box over here on the right, and they're not part of the controller's attributes. And that's because they're controlling values inside an expression. So don't expect everything to be over there. And so that's how that works. And then in controller, we've got the same thing again. For fast moving, we've got the blue boxes. And for the radius, density, and emission rate, we've got the 3 again. So I don't think anything, let's see when the next thing is. Rings BA, that's rings moving in, rings AB is moving in one direction, rings BA moving in the other direction. Let's go do stroke. First, let's knock out these other ones, because flex, going to be exactly the same thing. Now, oh yeah, flex, there is one difference on flex. It has the scale min and scale max here, and that just changes the size. And so whereas the other ones in rings AB, it had this scale PP, which is just change the size. That's the way it works in flex. So that's the only difference between flex and rings, sparkles, rings, flex, and puffs. Puffs will be the same. It's got the scale PP, and then the controller again, that have the exact same things in all of the other layers. So a lot of this is just doing the same thing again and again. Now strokes, the 2-stroke layers are a little different. They have a radius. The radius works the same, but it has one thing, the stretch. So if we take a look at this, oh, by the way, if this doesn't show up, this happened to me before, is you can go into show, and you've got to show NURBS surfaces for this. Otherwise, that won't show up. And if you want, you can hide the curves if it's just getting annoying. And then what stretch does. Now, this looks a little big, but the thing is with this stretching, or with the 2-stroke layers, is that the compositor has tremendous amount of control in this. So you can get away with a lot. So if we look at this, change the stretching to 5. Basically, you know, what you want to do is get it to where it looks maybe different for each shot. You know, you don't want to make too much adjustment. Anyway, you know, just adjust that one until it looks the way it should. And then we've got radius. Radius just changes how big it is. So if I select that curve, you'll notice it's quite big, but we need a lot of taper, so it's completely invisible at the edges. So don't worry that you think, oh, that looks really big, because it should. Okay, I think next we need to do the puffs. That's the same. Mask, nothing to adjust here. And I've got it green because you need to have, doesn't have it. Oh yeah, you need to have the 2 character geometry in there. But we covered that in the last video, so nothing to see there. And then the last thing are the light rings. So let's go through how that's set up. Let's step into one of the light rings layers. It's got a bunch of stuff here. And now on this, for this to work correctly, first of all, let's get this light up out of the way. For this to work correctly, you need to have lights and shadows enabled. So now if you notice here, you see these red dots that showed up? These are the fake, this is the fake interaction. And the way, one thing that you could want to do on this is, you'll notice on opacity, first of all, we need to do a run-up on this. Actually, I think I did ring, so it would have been okay, but let's go ahead and do the run-up on this. Got a lot more stuff in this scene, so this is going to take a while. I'll just pause it here right quick. Okay, we're just starting to run up here. And what you'll notice is that, first of all, the light needs to be adjusted. And I wanted to do the run-up to show what it is that's being adjusted. So if we look back here, and in the opacity, this is the one that's lavender color. If we change the opacity up to, let's just say 1, you'll notice that we start to see these particles distributed along the curve. And then if we continue the run-up, you'll see that the particles are moving, and these are what would be sprites in the rings layers, but in the lights layers, they are actually spheres. So what we want to do out of this light is move the light such that it has, we see these red dots in the frame, and they are basically near the entanglement. So we'll just go through how that's done. So to do that, we need to disable shadows and disable lights, and then that's good enough. That's plenty fast. And so then we'd want to go, the beginning of this shot is 84, so we want to go to 84. And if we want to put the light, that's not where, you know, this is Maya doing this. Yeah. Okay. Back to normal, whatever that was. This will be faster if I turn this on. So what we we want the light to be in about the center of the entanglement for the beginning of the shot. And just someplace you can have, the thing is the composer will have a lot of latitude on this too. And it's super fake, so don't think that it's going to change much by, you just want to make sure that the dots are in the scene. And remember to see the dots, turn on the lights and the shadows, and as you see the dots there. So we want to then set a key, notice over on the right, and then we want to go to the end of the shot and check the light. Make sure it's about in the middle. Something like that will be fine. And the only thing that the light sees are the spheres, and the only thing that it does is cast shadows. So we want to then key selected here, and then go to the middle of the shot and then see if it holds up. And I think it could use a little more work. So we'll key it there too, and then that should be fine. Okay, so that's ready to go. Now, to adjust it, remember we have here in opacity. Let's make this white again, so you can see, since it's being adjusted from 0 to 1. And the only reason to adjust it from is so that the spheres will be visible in the scene, just basically so you can see what you're doing. You need to remember to adjust this back to 0 when you're finished. That's why it's labeled violet, to remind you to adjust it back to 0 if you need it at all. Because once you get the hang of it, you won't even need it at all. But we missed our run up here, so the spheres particles lost their place. So I'm going to do another run up here to show a little better about how that looks. So I'll pause again. Okay, so I run it back up a little bit, and you can see these spheres in the scene. And so if we enable lights and shadows again, we'll see the red dots are back. And then your options for this is to just control the size, so you can make them as big. And again, this is something that the compositor has a lot of control of, so just give them enough red so they can pull out the dots, and then they can make the changes they need. And then put the opacity back to 0 so it doesn't render. And that's how the light rings layer is set up. And I think that covers everything. Let's see, we did light rings, puffs, flecks. Yep, I think that's all. And it shouldn't take long to dial in these shots once we get things started. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.